and it's a type of. So today I'm going to be going over our session is called Effective ChatGPT in the vein of effective Java or effective JavaScript or Python, effective tool. How to effectively use this tool. And I've termed it riding the AI bicycle. And I call it a bicycle modeled after the way Steve Jobs called the personal computer a bicycle for your mind. Similarly, the GPT I'll be showing you today, there's a lot of hype around it, a lot around AI in general. It's going to take away jobs and knowledge work and so on, or that it's going to automate away huge amounts of the economy. And I'm going to show you the on-the-ground, real-life experience, the good, the not so good, the tools that you can use with it, and why a lot of these claims, this hype for now, is overblown. It is not like a self-driving Tesla semi. It is actually much more like a bicycle. And in that sense, it's better than walking. Traditional knowledge work that you and I are involved in right now is walking. One foot in front of the other, in front of the other. That's how we're working. But with GPT technology, it's like riding a bicycle. You get on your bicycle, you start pedaling, and then you stop pedaling and it keeps going. So you conserve a lot of energy, you conserve a lot of effort using these tools. So just a little bit about me today before we begin. My name is Joe Hacobian. I have over a decade of experience in software development, places like Digital Domain, Shell Oil, Jet Propulsion Lab. I'm also responsible for, I call it the initial because I'm not done, initial iteration of Armenia 360, street view mapping of the top 10 cities of Armenia and Artsakh. Boy, does that ring today. I don't know what I'm going to do with those images, but yeah, we'll discuss that a different day, a different time. I'm an IT enabling member of United AIO from 2021. I take a multidisciplinary approach to projects, and I tend to be an early adopter of technology, which brings us to today's talk. So, what is ChatGPT? ChatGPT, what does GPT stand for? ChatGPT stands for General Purpose Transformer. So chat, as the name implies, means that you have a dialogue with it back and forth. And this talk is about the insights and strategies that I've employed ever since it came out in January, February. I became a paying member for ChatGPT immediately, seeing the potential for it. And ever since the plugins became available, which I will show you, you will see why it's incredible. So ChatGPT belongs to a class of AIs called large language models. And what this means is they train these models, these neural networks. I think it has over 90 layers deep. ChatGPT itself is what's known as a mixture model. And you could think of it like a service desk, a help desk. You show up to the help desk and it's one person that you see, but behind that one person, there's 8 specialists, 8 experts. And depending on what road you want, English, composition, or do you want to talk about engineering or math, do you want to talk about programming, a different large language model is employed and it mixes back and forth. It's a very innovative approach. I'm going to be showing you how to use ChatGPT to accelerate primary sources research. What does that mean? Well, in an engineering context, we're engineers here, primary means textbooks. It means the primary sources. Here is a textbook on neuroscience. Here is a textbook on electrical engineering. And I want to ask questions through that textbook, through ChatGPT. I want to have a dialogue. It could be a white paper. It could be a data sheet. It's quite interesting. I'm going to be talking about chat starting conditions, textual syntax, formatting, and extraction of structured text. That's just jargon. All it really means is what's structured text. An outline is structured text. A heading, a project proposal, that's structured. But even more structured is programming code. So like Python, C++, JavaScript, that's structured. That's very structured text. How do you extract it from ChatGPT, put it into your environment, use it? And then we'll be moving on to program creation for non-software engineers, people who don't know how to code, but they want to get something done. And then program creation for software engineers, people who do know how to code. After that, we'll wrap up with translational and utilitarian uses of ChatGPT, and I'll explain what those are. It's ChatGPT understands Armenian language. It actually understands it very well, much better than Google Translate. ChatGPT is available as a mobile app. There's a ChatGPT official mobile app you can download. I have spoken to people who have come from Armenia recently, and their English isn't very good, but their Russian is. And I've actually counseled them, hey, download ChatGPT even on the free level, ask it questions in your language, in Armenian, and then ask it, how do I say this in English in a professional way? Instantly, they get the answers. It's already helping all kinds of people. This technology is truly incredible. So moving on, we're just going to be talking about the type of AI that we're dealing with. It's called generative, and this really changed in 2017. In 2017, there was an inflection point. Up until that, we had AI GPT-1, GPT-2, 3, 3.5, transformer architecture, which is like the way in which the pieces of an artificial intelligence architecture put together. Transformer is one architecture. There are other architectures, recurrent neural networks, and other more basic building block architectures. But what happened in 2017 was, up until that point, Google and Facebook and anybody who was involved in AI, they were using AI for classification. So what that means is find images of cats, find images of military targets, find images of tanks, find trees. You remember those Google captchas where you're picking out all the buses and the bicycles? You were providing training. You were helping, it's called RLHF, reinforcement learning with human feedback. So you were actually giving human feedback with those captchas. Up until 2017, that was the dominant AI use case, that classification. Generative AI is completely different. It says, let's take everything that we've learned about the labeling and the features and this latent space of knowledge that we know. We've been trained about what a cat is, what a bus or a street crossing or a doorbell is. We have this now in a vector space. Now let's take it, instead of saying this is this particular member of this class, let me generate, let me output. You tell me what members of what classes you want, and I will output those back into an image. It's in reverse. Instead of classification, it's in reverse. It generates content. It can generate text. It can generate images. DALL-E, perfect example. In fact, some of the images you'll see in this presentation were generated by DALL-E. Generative AI creates new content. Large language models specialize in generating human-like text. So that's what an LLM is, and it's quite interesting. Now, having said that, you can't just jump into GPT or BART from Google, Bard rather, and just become productive. It doesn't work that way. Just like talking to a person, you have to have a strategy. You have to have a good strategy for what you want to get out. You want to be in the right gear of the bicycle. If you have a hard task to do, like a technical task, it's uphill, you have to be in the right gear so that your effort, your labor time, and the computational cost, if you're paying for the paid tier of it, it's productive for you. And you also have to know when to quit. There are times when you have to know when to quit, and I'll touch on those. And then I'm just going to run over the optimal use cases for ChatGPT. It's really good for answering questions. If you've ever been to Stack Overflow, if you've ever been to these question answer sites on the internet where you Google for something, this knocks out a lot of your technical Googling. It destroys it. Much, much more helpful. So it's great for answering questions. It's also great if you're in university and you have a question about something, but the TA isn't available, or you're in a math class and you're doing calculus, or you're doing some kind of integration and you don't understand why this particular part, or maybe there's an epsilon and you don't understand. It can help you. And the way it helps you is it can actually iterate a follow-up question. You can say, what about this part? And it will go into that part. It has a massive latent space. It's good at summarizing text. I'll show you live demos of this. It's good at generating code. I'll show you live demos of this. But what is it not good for? ChatGPT is terrible for real-time decision making. It's a chat bot. It's not now. GPT architecture is great for that. GPT-2 powers the AI behind Comma AI, which is a self-driving car startup. They support 250 models of cars, and they're amazing. For $1,200, you can have level 2 autonomy. That's GPT-2 powered. So transformer architectures are amazing for prediction, but ChatGPT is terrible for real-time decision making. It's not very good for tasks requiring deep domain-specific knowledge. If I ask it really detailed C++ questions or about something in Fortran, I'm going to have to update its context with a PDF, and I'll show you how we do that. It's not good for super niche content, super niche problems. Asking for diagrams in a pixel or vector format. Let's say you want a diagram, like a nice diagram, like a Visio. You can't get that with ChatGPT, and DALL-E can't help you. So these are not magic. You can't just get anything. It's not a genie. They're good for some things, not good for some things. And so you really, not yet, it is not yet able to provide visual output. So, and this is just a little bit of minutia about which I'll cover. So there's a mechanism in transformers called attention. And you can think of attention as a window. It's a window of knowledge. And everything inside that window, you can ask the AI to help you with. Everything outside that window, the AI cannot help you. So attention is important. And so it's good to be mindful. And the way we summarize attention is tokens. What's a token? A token is a word. It's typically 5 characters up to like the length of a word, but that's a token. Average is 5 to 8 characters. And so there are token limits in the contextual attention of these models. The free tier of ChatGPT, which is GPT 3.5, doesn't cost any money to use, has a limit of 4,096 words. Okay. How many pages is that? It's about 8 to 10 pages. And you might wonder, is that my whole conversation? No. I paste into the chat of a ChatGPT session. Here is background information on my problem. Here's some code. And I paste that. And then I paste some, and I would like this to happen. All of that I'm pasting is taking away from that 4,096 words. So we can fit about 8 to 10. And then when it responds, it resets. And the next interaction, you get another 4,096. That's the attention window. Now the GPT Plus, which is GPT-4, it has double the limit, 8,000, which is like 20 pages. Actually, it's more than that. It's more than that. But if you try to paste more than 15 pages into the web interface of ChatGPT, they have a sentry that guards. It does not allow more than 15. I think they don't want to overwhelm their servers, but 15 pages of context on a single interaction, that's a lot. Like a follow-up question, you have 15 pages. That's a huge amount of attention. If you do opt for the paid version of GPT-4, it's $20 a month. In my humble opinion, it is the largest bang for your buck. That's like easily 100x a return on investment. For that $20, you're getting more than $2,000, way more. You're getting $4,000 to $5,000. If you're a technical knowledge worker, you're getting $4,000 to $5,000 of value. Plugins, that's what it gives you. It gives you plugins for PDF access, a link. You can point it to URLs on the internet, links. You can say, look at this web page. Tell me if this web page contains what I'm looking for. Tell me what this web page is saying. You can point it to PDFs and say, please read this PDF and tell me if this is in this PDF. It can summarize, and we're going to do a demo of that. So that's really cool about the paid tier. All right, so before I get into primary source research and what it looks like and what these ingestion services are. I'm going to take a pause. And if anybody has questions, feel free to either drop them into the chat or raise your hand. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to address those right now. Give it about 30 seconds to see if anybody has any questions, and then I'll keep going. Okay. Looks like we don't have any questions. Great. What are the most effective plugins you use? Excellent question. Okay, so yeah, absolutely. Let's go over some of those. I personally, I use two. I use something called Ask Your PDF, and it has a free tier, which is nominally helpful for like small PDFs, 10 pages. It can really scale. I'm going to show you a demo where I have a neuroscience textbook, 1,200 pages, and we actually get data in and out of it. It's incredible. The other one that I use is link access. So I can point it to web pages and say, look at this web page. Can you tell me if what I'm looking for is in this web page? So that while I'm thinking of something else, it's looking at the web page. So it's almost like two attentions at the same time. There are many plugins. I will show you. Yes, and they do. The question was, some plugins occasionally interfere with each other, disable some, yeah. How do you avoid that? At this point in the curve, adoption curve, it's trial and error, just learning about that. And also, you only get 3. So that means of all the plugins, you can enable 3 of them. So if you're really using Ask Your PDF a lot, you keep that one on, you have 2 more slots that you can enable. And then once all 3 are used, you can't enable more. You have to disable one to enable another. So you have a budget of 3 plugins you can use at a given time. And I think that has to do with the attention limits as well, the token limits. Now, having said that, GPT 4.5 and 5 are around the corner. We're having incredible acceleration of AI capabilities. I will not be surprised to see, like, theoretically, GPT-4 actually has 32,000 words. It's not 8,000. They limited for the web. It's actually limited. So you can bet that non-limited actors like governments and offline users of GPT technology, they're not limited. Microsoft recently published a paper about 1 billion token attention, billion words of attention. So in the realm of GPT-5 and 6, we're going to be seeing something like 250,000 tokens, 250,000 words. That's a library. So this is temporary, these limits. What I'm showing you is temporary. It's going to get much more capable. But even when it's that capable, I still don't think it's going to take your jobs. And you'll understand why in a moment. Right, so let's get into some of these. I'm going to show you Ask Your PDF, and as well as the different plugins. And we're going to do a research exploration of a Stanford neuroscience textbook that you get from Stanford Library, and research exploration of electrical engineering, art of electronics. So for that, I'm going to switch to Chrome, and let's have a look at Chrome. I believe that should do it. Okay, great. All right. So, and before I jump into ChatGPT, there's many other AI applications of generative AI. For your notes, I would suggest checking out 11 Labs. It's something I've been playing with. You can generate very realistic TTS, text-to-speech, but that's not the cool part. The voice cloning. If you have audio recordings of yourself, voicemails of a passed away loved one, it's kind of creepy, but if you have enough of them, or if you have recordings of a celebrity, you can upload all those voices. It will train itself on those voices, and then you can type text, and that voice that you trained, that you uploaded, will read that text. So just wanted to throw that in there. It's kind of cool. Right, so we're going to move right along into the plugins, and let me illustrate those. This is the ChatGPT screen, you can see, and this is the free tier. It's completely free. You have unlimited. It's very fast, but again, you get some value when you step up to GPT-4. So this is plugins. Now we're going to take a look at plugins. So, okay. So when you enable plugins and you have the check mark, notice that right here you have these icons and you have a little arrow. You click on the little arrow, and then you see it says 2 of 3 enabled, right? And if you scroll all the way down, they make it a little hidden. Click on Plugin Store. You can search plugins. As you can see, there's many plugins. There's many services for chatting with PDFs and code pads, and it's updated every day. So you can see there's a lot of capabilities. As I work in software engineering, I enabled the PDF and the link reader. There's Wolfram Alpha, Wikipedia. But remember, every one of these that you enable, it takes away one of those slots. So you can enable or disable them, but you do have some. So yeah, so that's pretty cool. The two that I use, Access Link. So you can access any links on the web, and Ask Your PDF. And the reason I use Ask Your PDF is because I'm about to show you the interface for Ask Your PDF. It allows you to deal with huge PDFs, right? So, okay, let's take a look at Ask Your PDF. This is askyourpdf.com. You can create an account. It's free to create an account. And then let's take a look at the pricing tiers for that. So, let's log out of here. Okay. So you can see that for nothing, for free, you can get 100 pages per document, 100-page PDF. That sounds like a lot. 100 pages, that's decent, right? It's a big PDF, 15 megabytes. You can ask 50 questions a day against Ask Your PDF for free. 3 conversations, 1 document per day. Again, casual usage, it's fine. And if you want to use premium, you can get 2,500 pages per document, 30 megabytes. That's a lot. It's 1,200 questions per day. That's more than you're ever going to use. It's really the limit here is a 30 megabytes. Typically, PDFs are bigger than that. I opted to go with the Pro plan, 90 megabytes. And even at 90 megabytes, that neuroscience textbook that I'm going to show you, I had to combine chapters into like groups of 10, and it was like 60 megabytes, upload that. So I uploaded 6 of them, and I got all 1,200 pages, 6,000 pages per document, that's great. So yeah, this is what differentiates Ask Your PDF. What does it look like? How does it, when you log in, what does it look like? So let's go ahead and log in. I believe it as, I always bury the login on the bottom. There we go. And I believe I went with Google, so I'm just gonna log in with myself. That should be fine. Okay. All right. So let's see if my documents, there we go. So little chat bubble, you have your documents. And you're wondering, this is a ChatGPT talk. Why are you telling me about Ask Your PDFs? Well, you see that attention we talked about earlier. Ask Your PDFs is a vector database. You don't need to know what that is right now, but that's what it really is. It's a vector database. It ingests. Let me show you what that looks like. Go to upload, little cloud upload icon. And then let's see, we have well, this particular data sheet has, what can we upload from we have a preface that we haven't uploaded that yet. So for example, I drag in a PDF. This particular one is 3 megabytes. It's not too big. You drag it in, it analyzes the document, turns it into a vector form, which means ChatGPT can understand it. When you do this, it gives you a document ID, very important. So that document ID, when you're in ChatGPT, let's look at our documents here. See, we have our one, and you can actually ask you can do a question directly here. That's 6 pages. It's not a very big PDF. It's better to go with ChatGPT. I can say, please give me the summary of this document. And then it tells you it's the 3rd edition of comprehensive neuroscience textbook, covers various topics related to the study, sources, and so on. So great. That's a very short summary. That's not, we never use Ask Your PDF for its chat capability. We upload it so we can use it with ChatGPT. So here you can see the preface, and then you can just click on the little copy link right here. Copy that link. Okay, great. And the same goes for all these others. You can see I have chapters 1 to 10, 11 to 20, 21 to 30, and so on. It's a table of contents. These were scanned. Paper was actually scanned. This is not a digital book. So let me take you to ChatGPT. And so all of these documents, we're going to start a new neuroscience discussion. I'm going to go to ChatGPT 4. We have our 2 plugins enabled here. And I'm going to, so when you start the conversation with ChatGPT, you set the contextual stage. You don't do what's known as a one-shot, where you just ask one question from the beginning and the AI just nails it. That doesn't happen, okay? It can't read your mind. It doesn't know what you want. It's a multi-shot process. It's a conversation. It's a chat. So I'm going to say, hello, I'd like to have a discussion. And these words are important. If I say, I'd like you to answer my question, it will answer your question. The neural network behind it will not be ready for a follow-up and a follow-up. But if you prime the GPT with, I'd like to have a discussion with you about neuroscience topics from a textbook, which I have uploaded to Ask Your PDF. I have chapter by chapter in groups of 10 document IDs, which I will share below. Okay, so I'm telling it, hi, I want to have a discussion with you. I have a textbook and I have Ask Your PDFs, which is enabled as a plugin. I would like to have a discussion with you about this book. Okay, fair enough. So what we do is open up I've done this in advance. So I'm just going to copy and paste it. You can do this with a single PDF. When you copy and paste into ChatGPT, when you paste, it's important. It's actually important to give it. Now, you don't have to use what I use, but I found this works really well. So I give it 3 of these little backticks. What key is that? That's the one that's to the left of the number 1 and to the 1 key up from the tab key. Up in the corner of your keyboard, you have 3. That's the little backtick. There's a tilde, a wavy tilde as well on the same key. So then I make a new space, just shift space, and I paste, right? And then I close it like that. When I do this, ChatGPT becomes aware that there's a separation. Something is separated. You can try to do plain spaces, but when you do this triple backticks, it understands, okay, because almost nothing uses the triple backticks, so it's a unique thing. So here, these are just different uploads I did. I did a table of contents. Here's ID for that, book index ID for that. So this is the bicycle. This is not a self-driving semi. This isn't, you have to pedal. You do have to do work. But as I will illustrate to you, we're going to go through a 1,200-page neuroscience book and get information out of it, and even summaries I haven't read this book myself. I have not read it. So just like a bicycle, we're going to go much, much faster than somebody manually trying to do this. And here are just the chapters. I did in groups of 10. So you can see 1 through 10 has this ID. Why am I pasting this to ChatGPT? It can understand this text, natural language processing. It can understand. So part of the reason I'm posting this is so that now ChatGPT will become aware. Oh, for chapter 13, I need to go to this ID and I'll find information for brain energy metabolism. And for chemical senses, taste, smell, faction, it's this one. So that's what that is. After I've pasted this in, I'm going to say, can you access the documents I have provided via their document IDs? I always ask it to confirm. And then I send it off. And then we have a response. See, it's actually accessing this. You can see table of contents, and it got a response. This is the response that Ask Your PDF provided. That's it. Everything else that we get from ChatGPT is part of the neural network. I've got access to the table of contents of your neuroscience textbook. We've got a ton of chapters to dive into, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, great. And so then I'm going to ask it just an off-the-wall question, right? I'm going to say, can you tell me which chapter and which chapter would be most helpful with explaining the role of mitochondria in central nervous system neurons? Kind of a niche question, not very broad. Okay. So then it's asking for a summary. Screwing mitochondria in document 910. So what would that be? 910 is, it's asking the table of contents. Interesting. However, chapter 4 titled Subcellular Organization of the Nervous System, organelles, wow. So it looked in the table of contents, couldn't find it. It looked at the chapter headings that I provided, subcellular organization of the nervous system, organelles and their functions. And if you're wondering, did I write this? No. In a previous session, I asked ChatGPT to generate this list. So I didn't generate this list. It went and it pulled them out. I provided the table of contents, but I did not write that document. So it's telling me chapter 4, titled Subcellular Organization and Their Functions. Sounds like it could be a gold mine for what you're looking for. Okay. So you always follow up. If it's doing something right, you want to reward it. You can reward it like the thumbs up. And it says, do you want to provide feedback? An easier way to reward it is to say, that sounds like a good start. You never say excellent and we're done. You always say, that's a good, you're in the right direction. You don't want to give it away. You want to give it just enough praise so that it actually scores these praises that you give it. And it influences the next version. That sounds like a good start. And you also check the table of contents for, or index for metabolism and include that chapter as well. So now it's going to look for metabolism. And you can see it's making another thing, a request. Chapter 13, brain energy metabolism, and chapter 38, food intake and metabolism. So now we have 3 chapters. Look, it even summarizes it without me saying anything. It's summarizing this, food intake and metabolism. But these 2, 4 and 13, actually deal with, likely, the mitochondria. The third 38 is just food. It is not directly related to what I was asking for. It tells me about it, but it doesn't set it up as the outline. Okay. Please go ahead and check those two chapters for mitochondrial roles in CNS. Okay, so I'm telling it, please go ahead. I'm having a conversation with it. I have not read this book, but I'm getting so much value out of this book. Very interesting. Okay, functional domains of neurons but aren't highlighted. Okay. Let's mention metabolic pool of amino acids like glutamate present in mitochondria. That's interesting. The brain must be exploded. Great. This is not a section that's, this is from a section that's not part of chapter 413. Is the closest, okay. How about we drop the CNS requirement and go general for roles of mitochondria in neurons. So now we've broadened our search. We're saying, how about we go general? If you were to do this in Google, just this line alone would probably be half an hour or 15 minutes of different attempts, different searches. We have completely eliminated all that wasted time with a single prompt. It does mention mitochondrial cluster of myelinated axons, more about the structure. Kind of. Okay. I have a feeling the organelles chapter would be helpful here. All right. Sometimes the bicycle, it hits a snag. It doesn't, there's information in that book. It's not finding it. It needs to have the right prompts in order to find it. Want to manually check that chapter? Okay. What I can say is just tell me what that chapter says about mitochondria in a bulleted list, please. Okay. So you can also ask it for specific output formats. Can you give me a bulleted list? So now it's going to go look at that. Chapter 4. And come back. Okay, so then I can ask it, please give me the list of chapters you originally found. Okay. So you really have to know how to talk to ChatGPT to get something done. Here we're doing general accelerated research, and you really have to know. I wasn't really sure what I was looking for, just a very general, what about mitochondria and neurons? It's not very general. It's not very specific. It's general, and so on. But reading through this list, I could go into details. One other thing I'd like you to do is to say, can you give me a summary comprising a paragraph each for each chapter from chapters 1 through 10. And here it gets into the formatting. Yeah, Karen's right. You can ask it what organelles are covered in chapter 4 and then ask about a specific organelle. That's right. You have to go into the details of what it gives you. Here I'm going to ask it about output formatting. I'm going to say, can you give me a summary comprising, it can do this quite readily, a paragraph for each chapter from chapters 1 through 10. Please format the summary in Markdown and show the output in a code block. Okay. So why did I say please format the summary in Markdown? I didn't do it because I like Markdown per se. I did it because if you want to extract text from ChatGPT and you pull it like this, you select it and you copy it, you then have to take that text and you have to put it into Word and fix it again. So here you can see it's making the summaries. So chapter 3, cellular component summary not available. Let's see what did it ask? It's a chapter 1 summary. That's why. So here you can see it asked for chapter 1 summary, and it's not, the summaries are not available for, now this is not true. I can say, actually, please make a new request to ask your PDF for each chapter, and in that request, include just the chapter name and the request for a summary. After you have completed all the requests, then rewrite the markdown in a code block. So what I'm telling you to do here is the way you're doing it is not helpful. Please change the way you're doing this to do it in a different way. And we'll see if it's followed my, so you can see it's followed my suggestions. It's actually making a request for chapter 1. This is what it should have done. And here's chapter 2. Chapter 2. So it's going to do this for every chapter. You might think, well, this is taking forever. Well, compared to writing the summaries yourself and reading the chapters yourself, this is actually quite fast. It's going to be done in probably a span of a few minutes. So we're going to let it go and do this. And then it's going to write the chapters. Now, I actually did do all the summaries with ChatGPT, which I have here, but I'd like you to see it in action before I show you the completed summaries. I want you to see how much time it takes. So this is chapter 5, and that's chapter, okay. So while it's doing this, I'm just going to add, I'm not going to submit, but I'm going to add, just for the sake of our chapter 6. It follows directions really well. So here's the summaries that it generated of the whole book. Generating these summaries took me about 20 minutes for 53 chapters. I told it to do about a short paragraph. So here you can see each one of these. And it goes on and on and on and on. It's just impossible to summarize chapters for 53 chapters in 20 minutes, unless you've read the book. If you haven't read the book, you can't do it. I have not read the book. So, all right, here we have chapter 10. Let's see how it's outputting this. And sure enough, based on the title, well, to cellular, possibly, it even assumes, that's interesting. Now, this delves into, you don't always get the same output for every input. Here it's saying in chapter 3, cellular components of nervous tissue. If we look at let's take the first 10 of these. If we look at what it generated previously in the afternoon today, what was it, chapter 2, unfortunately? Here you can see that it certainly got information. It was able to get information. So we look at the second request that it made here. And here we have, no, it got a request. It got information. It got plenty of information. And here it's telling us that I couldn't find a summary for this chapter. For the chapters where you state there is no summary, the requests have returned information. I would like you to synthesize a summary for them. Can you do that? All right, so here we have chapter 1. So you don't always get the same information every single time. Like every time you use it, it says no summary was available, no summary was available. But in fact, information came back. So that's something that's probably going to be improved. Sometimes you have to prod it and prod it. So, okay. So that's summarization of work, synthesize summaries through chapters. And you might be wondering, well, I use ChatGPT, Joe, and I don't see, look at the way it's talking. There you go. It seems to have a personality. And let me explain that. So if you go into settings and beta, which is right down here, your user, you click on settings, and you'll see beta features. Actually, is it there or is it on another screen? There is a very useful screen here. And it's either you click on custom instructions. There you go. So you click on your user, you click on custom instructions. Now, it asks you about yourself. You can choose not to answer. Here is where it's important. If you want to modify the output of ChatGPT on every single chat, let's say you're making code. We'll get into a code demo in a moment. If you wanted to indent each line a specific number of spaces, you can tell it that. If you want specific behavior, you can tell it that. But if you're just doing general work, you can say, when you reply to me, this is what I said. You can change this to suit you. But in the custom instructions where it says, how would you like ChatGPT to respond? When you reply to me, just speak as if I'm speaking in my tone of voice and phrasing. Reading it back, I should think that my own mirror self is replying to me in prose, grammar, and style. So in that sense, it sounds less like a robot when it replies, and it analyzes all of the chats it's had with me. And the way I open the chats, the way I close the chats, and it opens and closes its responses in the same way. And then down here, I say, if and when we're involved in coding, please treat all tab indentation as my preference, et cetera, et cetera. You can have your preference. I would also prefer, this is just details about coding, structure statements, if, while, and for loops would. I could have easily have said, anytime you write a function, please write documentation and comments above it. I could have said that. I didn't. I probably will. That's probably a good idea. And it will. It will document everything. Right now, I have to ask it to document it. But this is for every single request, remember. So these custom instructions are super, super helpful. And you access them from your username, custom instructions. That's how you access them. With this particular demo of the summarization, like for chapter 2, where it says, I don't have a response, yeah, there is data. So that it's not pulling this right now, but 2 hours ago it did, tells you that this product is still in a developmental phase, right? It's getting better. It's most likely what the last version was August 3. In the September version, this is probably going to be solved. In fact, if you thumbs down, this isn't helpful or this isn't true, both of them, let me show you about another feature. I want to send negative feedback so they improve the product. In my previous discussion, which is right here, this is the previous discussion. And you can see it's a long discussion. There's a lot of stuff going on here. I want to share this discussion. There's a little share button right here, share chat. And it gives me a link, copy link. And then I can say, all right, great. Let me go over here and I can tell them, hey guys, this isn't helpful. In my previous chat at the following thing. Look, it's trying again. You do notice that it's trying again. And it even said likely. When you hit negative, it actually triggers ChatGPT to try to do better. But it, in this case, it's not doing better. You can see chapter 2 likely outlines. That's not very confident. So following link, ChatGPT was able to provide relevant and accurate summaries without any issue whilst using Ask Your PDF. A few hours later, and it seems not to see the responses from Ask Your PDF and proceeds to as if it cannot see the data. Please fix. Right. I'm going to submit that feedback. And now it said, hey, while you were submitting your negative feedback, this was the original answer on the right-hand side. And this is on the left is the new answer. We see likely, and we see it over and over. So it has not improved. In the time that I was complaining, it didn't get better. Neither answer is better. And you can see every time it retries, there's a number here. The first attempt and the second attempt. It shows you it's 3 attempts. So that's how you can give feedback to it. Before I go on, I just want to see if anybody has any questions. I don't want to keep going without addressing anyone's questions. So I just want to switch back to our PDF here. Okay. So here we've covered, and go ahead and submit your questions if anybody has questions. Show people they can redo and revise their prompt to explore. Oh, right. So we'll jump right back into ChatGPT in a moment. So we've covered Ask Your PDF. That's essentially uses a technology called vector databases. It also uses embeddings to embed that data. We've ingested a PDF, gotten the document ID for the PDF in the preface PDF that we showed. And we've showed how Ask Your PDF works. So yeah, what we're going to do next is show people how we can revise. So here we are. Great. All right. And you might be thinking, well, okay, it's not amazing for accelerating research. What are some of the other things it can do? Let me take my request here is a little pencil. Click on that pencil. And now I can change my request. It's often very helpful to do this. The requests have returned information. So then I can ask, for example, why are you stating that there is no summary? Can you try to access the Ask Your PDF API again with better or different phrasing, or simply try again? So here what I'm doing is I've revised my prompt. I'm saying, can you try this again? Why are you stating that there is no summary? And so now it's actually going to try again. Okay. Overview, do you see that? Instead of using the word summary, it said overview. So now it's trying with different phrasing. All right. So it's gonna go and it's going to try to do that. While that's running in the background, and it remembered my my instructions to, now I'm not going to wait for it. I'm going to move on to the next slide and I'll jump back. But what we'll do, and that's another nice thing, you can have it do things in the background, so you're not actually tied up with a specific task. Right. So that's accelerated primary source research. And then we can do a dive into the electrical engineering, art of electrical engineering textbook as well. I will show that while ChatGPT is doing its processing. So, for example, let's let me share that again. And if anybody has questions, please jump in. Okay, here we are. It's still going. All right. We're going to open up that art of electrical engineering just to show you how big this is. Yeah. And electronics. So, for example, this is a pretty well-known textbook, The Art of Electronics. It has 1,200 pages of very detailed. Let's see if we can access a random page by the time ChatGPT is done. Yeah. So as you can see, it's a classical textbook on electronics. So we're going to ask it some questions, all kinds of curves. This is a digital book. This is not a scanned book, so the quality should be higher. So that's that. Okay. Let's see where we're at with ChatGPT. Okay, so obviously it's having a do this and say, yeah, inability to fetch summary that was working a few hours prior. There. All right. So yeah, it must have run into a bug because this certainly wasn't occurring at 2 o'clock today. So what we're going to do is we're going to start a new chat. It might actually be resolved by starting a new chat. That's what I'm going to do. Let me open up so I can see if anybody has any chat questions. Okay. So new chat. So here we have that. We can either delete that chat if we want. We can rename the chat, or here we're just going to make a new chat. Here's a new chat. Hello, I'd like to have a discussion about, what shall we talk about? That's electronics related, about voltage controlled oscillators. I would like to reference the following book, The Art of Electronics. Okay, using Ask Your PDF with document ID, and then we grab the document ID. So here we have the art of, here we go. I'm going to grab that ID, paste it back over here. Can you tell me what the book, no, that's too general. I was going to say, can you tell me what the book has to say about voltage control oscillators? Please include specific pages and reference relevant summaries. Okay. So this is a one shot. I start the conversation. I didn't say, hi, let's get ready. I just go jump right into it. Hello, I'd like to have a discussion. Here's the book ID. Please tell me what it can find. Here we go. Notice that when it responds to me, it says, voltage controlled oscillators. It's not saying that because it's ChatGPT. It's saying that because that's how I typically talk in my chats. It's mirroring due to those custom instructions the way I speak. Okay, it's giving me a whole bunch of useful information here. The art of electronics has some good stuff. Let's dive in. Emitter coupler oscillator. Now this is interesting. All right, this is ChatGPT working at its best. Emitter coupled oscillator, which is a simplified version of what's used in the, okay, I have no idea what that is. This oscillator is part of that digital logic family converted to a record frequency by, okay, so I'm going to ask it a question. I'm going to say, you can't do this with Google search. Why do we call it, no, for the first item in your list, why do we call it a, can you explain this in layman's terms? Okay, so I'm asking you to dumb it down for me. In a transistor, the emitter is, oh, okay, so it's part of the terminals. Usually the part where the coupled means that the emitters of the two transistors are connected or linked together in some way. Then I say, can you show me this connection in ASCII art as a makeshift diagram? Now, earlier I said that it cannot create images for you, and it cannot. But this is a format called ASCII art. It uses characters. So that's called ASCII art. And you can use it to sort of see, can you sort of sketch it out for me, please? And it says, sure, here's a simple ASCII art representation, emitter coupled. So here I'm looking at this thing. I see a ground, I see a VCC, and I see an output. I see these two things that probably are connected together. And then I say, the emitter's bottom terminals of Q1 and 2 are connected or coupled. Okay, the output is taken. So now I know why, now I understand this is an emitter. That's what that means. I just learned something from a textbook and ChatGPT. And how long did it take? I think it took about 4 minutes. That's incredible. Can you imagine when this is generated as like a pixel, beautiful rendering as opposed to this? But even this I can understand, right? Now we can do the same thing with the neuroscience book, but I think there's some kind of API bug. There's something happening with that book because this book is just as technical, just as difficult. I think creating a new chat actually might have cleared something out in the memory. But okay, great. Now let's move on to the next. I actually had a very interesting discussion with electronics discussion. Right. Yeah, I had a very interesting discussion before this presentation started. I said, I'd like to have a discussion with you about electronics. Okay, see, this is not one shot. I'm like, can you see the document? I'm getting it ready. I'm holding its hand. Yeah, I can see it. Okay. And then I say, let's have a chat about a theoretical device. Do you know about the show Star Trek? Do you know what a tricorder is? Yes, I went there. I asked it for a tricorder. Oh, Star Trek, you're speaking my language. Okay. So obviously our current state, blah, blah, blah. What do I want? I want a tricorder. And then we moved into things like, I want a map. I want to see all the radio signals on that map from all the spectra, not just one, all the spectra. I want to start from 1 kilohertz, go all the way up to 24 gigahertz, like a radar, a passive radar with an antenna array. And we got into that. You're going to need an antenna array. Okay, so then we go into that. Well, okay, my follow-up is, can you access the data sheets? Okay, great. And then he looked at the data sheets, and then he said, for low frequency, for this range, you're going to need antennas of this size. Now, I could follow up and say, can we dive into this part? I want you to tell me more about antenna design for this low frequency. I don't know anything about radio frequency design. But ChatGPT has read 1 trillion tokens on the internet, and I can give it specific textbooks for more deeper discussions. I can certainly read and learn in an accelerated way by using ChatGPT. So yeah, that was a very, very interesting. We talked about electronically scanned radars. We talked about mechanically scanned radars, hybrid, different options. And I could just keep going and going and going. So, but I'm going to wrap it up with the accelerated research aspect of the talk, because that's just the accelerated research, and it's a rabbit hole we could go on for quite a long time on that particular subject. So what I'm going to do instead is move on to the second leg of the talk, which should be quite interesting. So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. And that would be, here we go. All right, so that's accelerated primary research, kind of cool. I showed you something about syntax and formatting. So set the scene, stating what you're about to provide, then delineate your contextual information. I use triple backticks. You don't have to. You can do whatever, but whatever you do, make it consistent. So make sure it's a consistent repeating set of symbols, and always begin with it on a new line and end with it. So make sure ChatGPT knows that this thing is different from this other thing that I gave you. Make that separation, right? So that's important. How to ask it to respond in a specific way. You can say things like, I asked it for Markdown, you saw, and it gave me Markdown. You can cut and paste that into, copy paste that into a Markdown app. It'll give you stuff you can put into Word, really nice. Why is that important? It's always repeatable. Markdown, you can always repeat it. There's web-based ones, but you can there's lots of Markdown apps. They're very nice. You can ask for CSV. You can ask for JSON or XML or even SQL. Speaking of which, so we're going to move forward to program creation for non-software engineers, right? So here, we're going to kind of use another feature of ChatGPT. We're now going to get into some of the amazing stuff we can do, which is actually writing code. So far, we're just doing research, but now we're going to write some code. It's going to write some code. If you're a non-software engineer, you want to gather and structure all the necessary information. What does that mean? What do I want my code to do? What do I want this thing to do? Okay? You have to have a goal in mind. You have to know what do I want to do here? And you have to tell ChatGPT, this is my overall goal. Overall, this is my goal. You have to bound the AI. Because if you don't bound it, it doesn't know. It doesn't know. You have to bound it. So for the conversation, okay, so you have to have an overall goal in mind for the conversation, punctuate the conversation with intermediate goals for each step. That means you have to give it, I'll explain this in a demo. And you have to have many varied examples of correct input to correct output. So this sounds really confusing. It's like, I don't understand what this could be. So we're going to jump in and try to ask ChatGPT to write an application that calculates half-lives. That's a pretty simple thing. Half-lives, easy. And then we're going to use our input-output pairs to validate the program. So this is for non-software engineers. We're not actually telling it how to do it, what we want it to do. We're just going to tell it if it can do it for us. We jump into it, and then here, all right, great. We're going to use another feature, which is advanced data analysis. And I believe, hello, do you have access to a Python interpreter? And that's the advanced data analysis. Hi there. Yep, I've got a Python interpreter environment. So it can actually do Python. It doesn't matter if your computer can do it or not. It can do it. Okay, that's interesting, isn't it? Now, I'm going to go back into my history of chats because I actually did this. I was feeling I could have written the half-life calculator myself. I was feeling lazy. So I decided to have it do it for me. So I came up with a name for a half-life calculator called steady state. And so, all right, we're going to go to the very beginning of this. And okay, so hello, I'm writing a half-life tracking calculator called steady state. It'll be command line Python 3. I'll take the following parameters. So basically here you can see it will take the following input: previous doses. Could be any integer, doesn't matter. Half-life in hours. What's the half-life? Okay. So this is for one cycle, another cycle, another cycle. Target concentration, target amount. All right. So we'll take that. And here's the guideline. Okay. So it decided to use this particular Python, but let's see what the actual, let's see here. Let's see what ChatGPT with its interpreter can do. I'm going to give it the same prompt that I gave it, that I manually tested. Here we're going to see what it decides in its own environment. So I've given it my requirements. It has to have this, this, and this, and give me the output. And now it's understanding, okay, I have to do this accumulation. I have to figure out what the next one is. Here's the math. And it got the math right. It's a half to the power of time over the half-life time. That's correct. And then it's doing the loop. That's the loop. Okay. So then I say, okay, remember, I'm pretending like I don't know anything about code. I'm just a user. I just wanted this. That's all I wanted. And, but I'll throw a buzzword out. Can you create this Python program using best practices for each aspect of the program? Please show me how you would do it. Again, I'm pretending like I don't know how to do this. Show me how to do it. Absolutely, let's get the show on the road. Again, not something ChatGPT would say. That's the custom instructions. So I haven't said show on the road in a long time. So now it's actually writing code. This is structured text. So before, when you were thinking, oh, it can't find a summary, this is terrible. Look at this. This is one reason why some of the biggest users of ChatGPT are programmers. I mean, it literally saves us $3,000 a month for the. And look, it got an error in its interpretation environment. Typically, I would have to copy this, put it into my own Python environment, execute it, get the error, paste it back manually. Hey, I got an error. It did it over here. It got the error. So now it made a change. Automatically, it made the change. That loop is closed. Now let's move on. So it figured, how long have we been doing this? We've been doing this for 3 minutes, 3 or 4 minutes, and we've got argument parsing going. I mean, that's crazy. Let's move on to the calculation functions. Okay, do it. Okay, so now it's writing this. And in the end, I can say, can you show me the entire program from beginning to finish? So it doesn't give me pieces. If you've noticed, it likes to do pieces. Like here, let me give you a piece here, a piece there. So once things are working, or intermittently, like those intermediate goals. Hey, can you tighten this up, please? Can you please show me the entire thing? Don't just show me pieces, show me the entire thing. Okay, great. So it's giving me a result. So then I would have to actually test this and come back with it. So before I can test it, I have to ask it to give me the full program. Function to calculate the time. So again, it's writing more code. Wow. Like it's really, in 5 minutes, it wrote this program. Now, the interpreter feature, I don't think was available when I did the first version of Steady State. This is a new update. So the interpretation environment, um, the productivity gain is incredible. Let me correct the test values. Yeah, so it's going to keep going until, like, if you give it 0, it doesn't break. If it doesn't give you negative values. Okay. So I can stop. Well, I don't want to stop it while it's fixing errors. So I can take a question if anybody has a question. Anna, did you have a question?
Այո, քո պրակտիկայում հայերեն հարցնի, sorry։ Քո պրակտիկան եղել է դեպքեր, որ ChatGPT-ին դժվարացել է պատասխանել քո ինչ-որ հարցի։ Ինչ հարցերի մեջ է դժվարանում պատասխանել։
Դժվարացել?
It was hard for ChatGPT to answer. Which question was hard?
The upper problem there is sensia, or input ga or output ga. When the problems involve an input and an output. So if I give you this, you should give me that. ChatGPT does great, does incredibly well. See, it fixed the bug. Great.
Emotional հարցերի չի կարողանում
պատասխանել. Yeah, the parts where it hiccups, not were neuroscience textbook. The neuroscience textbook, when it was summarizing it a couple of hours ago, it did a great job. But when we tried to summarize it again, it was having errors. Other thoughts become up. I used the thumbs down feedback and I reported that bug. Most people don't do that. It takes effort. So when they see those, they care. Perfect. The main function is working. We're good to go. Yes. So now that it's done, I can say, I would like you to show me the full implementation of this program from the very first line to the very last so that I can copy and test it myself. Okay, so now it's going to do here's the entire thing from beginning. You can see it's importing libraries. It has a function called parse the arguments. Great. And it even documented it because I said use best practices. So it's trying to document it. That's good. Yeah, it's doing the whole thing. Now you notice I asked in the neuroscience, I asked for code blocks. And the reason I did, this is a code block, code, but you can also have that markdown. Remember we had markdown in the code blocks. It's just a summarization format, just text really. The reason I always ask for code blocks is so that I can click on copy code and I get a nice clean copy and there's no weird formatting characters. I do it for a specific reason. It's not because I like looking at code. It's like, please make this easily copyable. That's what I actually mean when I do code block, ask for a code block. Okay, so here's the full code. Uncomment the following line, run the program from the command line, main. Okay, so, okay. Uncomment the following line. Okay, fine. Right, so I take this and I ask it a follow-up question. I copy it and I say, okay, can you give me an example of how you would execute this program from a terminal? Like, I mean, show me how you would structure the inputs. Okay, so it's going to do that. I copied it already. So I'm going to copy this over to a new window and paste this into an actual, okay, that's how it's doing it. And presumably that's going to work. So let's actually give that a test. Okay, and we can say steady state. Let's just make a new folder. Let me share this so you guys can see it. So this is for a non-software engineer. I didn't actually participate with ChatGPT. I didn't, okay. Hopefully this is shareable. All right. You should be able, oh wait, that's a different, that's over here. All right, so let's clear this and we'll use this instead. That's perfectly fine. All right, so I've copied this already. So I'm taking the output that ChatGPT gave me. And I'm just going to make a folder. ChatGPT, or just chat, it's fine. Chat. And then we can just say steady state. Hi. And just make a Python file. Oh, goodness. You could use your favorite editor. It's not important. Paste. And then there we go. All right. So there's a Python file. It's the one that ChatGPT gave me. So again, I don't know how to, I'm pretending I don't know how this thing runs. I have this Python file now. I make it executable. And then I go back to the chat where it gave me those examples. I didn't know how to run it. So I take these examples that it gave me and I go back here and I try to run it. And so it ran it in its environment. And so then we do this. Oh, right, Python 3, because we don't have, it's old. Oh, look at that. Okay, so you can see that we ran this. We're going to copy that. And then we're going to go back to ChatGPT. And we're going to say, hey, I ran your program with your suggested inputs. Here is the results. So this is QA. We're actually giving it QA. We're saying, hey, this is the program you gave me, and I ran it. Awesome. Looks like it's working as expected. So what it did was it looked at this input, and it looked at the output over here. So after all this bug fixing here, and it checked it against that. And that, in a nutshell, now if I don't know anything about programming, I'm presuming, and I say, please explain to me how works as a function. So now I'm asking it, hey, can you explain to me how this function that you wrote works? And now it broke down the function. And it's telling me, okay, well, this is what this function takes. And then it's telling me, here's the math for that. Okay. And then this is what we're going to do. This is what this function does. It's breaking down the function step by step. Because again, I don't know anything about programming, but I can read this list and I can say, oh, half-life, hours since doses. Okay. Hours since, half-life. All right. So then I go back to that function and I'm like, I don't understand what any of this means. So then I copy this and I say, I mean, can you explain what the Python code is doing here? So now I'm saying, teach me Python, ChatGPT. That's what I'm really saying. Now look. Not only did it build the program, test the program, provide me instructions on how to run the program, it's also teaching me Python for a non-software engineer. That's pretty incredible. Like, yeah, great job. Okay. So that's a demo of, you can paste code that you found on the internet and say, please explain this code, paste. And then if you don't understand something, say, can you explain that one part? What is that one part? And give the name. What does that do? And it'll explain to you, this is what it does. Okay. Can you write documentation for this? Let's say you're at work. Can you document these functions? Sure. You're going to sit there and document these functions? No, it's going to take time. Hey, ChatGPT, can you document this? Done. So that's the end of that. Just going to jump back over here. And I don't want to put you guys to sleep. Does anybody have any questions? So that's for non-software engineers. I'm not going to go through the software engineers one. I'm assuming that if you are a software engineer, you already know. Like if a non-software engineer can do that and you already know how to code, you don't need me to explain to you this. You can use the same techniques I just explained to you. You already know how to do this. So the next thing we're going to go to is to wrap up. Check this out. We're Armenian. We're going to ask it to say some things in Armenian. Translational utilitarian uses. We're not going to do HTML today because that's kind of boring. You can summarize documentation sites. We'll do a link example. But, and demystification of really, really messed up code. But here. Okay. So let's go back in and do a translation example, which is kind of cool. So here we are. That. Hello. Do you understand the Armenian language? Okay, so now the question is, what do we ask it in Armenian? But the news tuning, news access tuning. It doesn't have any access to news, so I can't ask it about ask it current events. Compare Kanemiran Google Translate. I'm going to compare its performance to Google Translate. So here we go. All right. So what we're going to do here. So we start from English, we go to Armenian, and we say, English. Շատ շնորհակալություն, որ մասնակցեցիք այս. That is awesome. All right, so in fact, this is what we can do. We can go to the very last slide and see how Google Translate performs. Okay, take this, put it into ChatGPT, and ask it, what is the following passage saying? Okay, now let's make sure, yeah. Thank you for taking the time to learn about the effective use of ChatGPT intricacies. We've discussed a lot from the fundamental concepts as well as large language models to the practical applications limitations. Now we have some time for questions, regardless of whether your questions are technical. The floor is yours. So what's on your mind? Got any questions or topics you'd like to dive into? What did Google say? Yeah, it's essentially the same thing. Yep. So yeah, you can do translations. You can ask something in Armenian and have it answer you in English. You can ask it to explain the best way to say something in a professional tone. So with that, I'm going to wrap that. And again, if anybody has questions, I'm happy to answer them. I haven't put anybody to sleep. Also, if anybody has any announcements, that'll be a great time. Are you gonna do Dolly? You know, Dolly's so hit and miss. I do have a Dolly subscription. I can show you Dolly. I can certainly show you Dolly. Okay, so this is Dolly. This is a text and image generation. It's just not very, well, let me put it to you this way. Let me explain. Let me log in. I signed up for great hopes. I was like, oh, this is going to be great. Yeah, not really. Okay, so these are kind of unrealistic. So for example, show an image. Um, let's see, an image in the style of animation, in the animation style, animation drawing style of Iron Giants, where a boy is riding a futuristic sci-fi hover bike set against a rust-colored atmosphere of brightly colorful industrial buildings. Okay, that's a lot of context. So, given the stellar performance of ChatGPT, you think, oh, well, this is going to be interesting. And this is what we get. First one is the boy on a roof. I said, boy is riding a futuristic sci-fi hover bike. Okay, I didn't see that on the bike. Over here, it looks like he's on a railroad. Something. Platform. This is about as close as it gets to a hover bike. Again, not really. Hit or miss. And I can't do follow-ups with Dolly. I can't say, hey, I could click on which one of these do I like the most. This boy is a robot. I want a boy, not a robot boy. This is the closest boy. Let's click on that one. And then say variations. So now it's doing variations, but the thing that it generated wasn't what I was looking for. It's not a chat history where I can say, hey, not quite what I was looking for. Okay, so this sort of looks that way. Any variations of that? It's kind of like you're going to spend a lot of money with Dolly if you wanted to generate things. It's you have to pick something and then variation and then variation and then variation. So, I mean, do any of these look anything like a boy with? And it loses context. Your context attention window disappears every time you do a variation. So that's. I wish I could give better, things for Dali, but this was my first attempt at the bicycle. It's like riding an AI bicycle. Yeah, no, just no. So if you have any tips or if you know of ways to make Dali behave better, yeah, yep, cool. Yeah, so I'm just gonna wrap that. And I'll hand the floor over to AESA.